Today on Soul Work for Moms. This week's guest is a mother of two who is passionate about something she calls empowered mothering. She finds it fascinating that even the most privileged of mothers feel exhausted, burdened, and consumed by their mother role. Ellen Boeder is a wife, mother, psychotherapist, and writer living in Boulder, Colorado, who never thought she would put her roles in that order. Since becoming a mother, she has been deeply engaged in conversations and questions around how to live a truly fulfilling life as a mother who prioritizes mothering without sacrificing one's health, relationships, or career. She currently works part-time with couples and women and maintains a blog that explores this sometimes elusive experience of empowered mothering. In today's episode, you'll hear Ellen's definition of empowered mothering, why she cringes at the work/motherhood balance phrase, what she's looking for when she has a client who's completely overwhelmed by motherhood, and her go-to resources when she feels like she's getting depleted herself. Hear her interview and this week's homework for your soul right after this. I'm Michelle Duncan-Wilson, and this is the Soul Work for Moms podcast, where I interview women about their journeys through motherhood and what they've learned about themselves along the way. I used to really struggle with my role as a mother, so I know what it's like to feel overwhelmed and unsure of what to do. If you want to grow both personally and spiritually through your journey of motherhood, this is the place for you. Welcome to Soul Work for Moms. So today we've got a really cool woman joining us that I'm thrilled to speak with. I reached out to this mama because I'm actually a fan of her husband's podcast, the Smart Couple podcast with Jason Gaddis. And first of all, Ellen, welcome to the show.
Thank you, Michelle.
And I promise we're not going to focus on your husband's podcast, although I highly recommend it. But I have to share the story that Jason on his podcast talks all about marriage or long-term relationship and working through the hard parts of marriage, and basically saying that the hard parts are inevitable and that doesn't mean that you're not meant for each other anymore. You've got to do the work to have a great relationship. And although I love everything that he has to say and all the tips that he gives, while I'm listening, I find myself always thinking, I want to talk to his wife. And so it just so happened that he had you on the show as a guest, and I really resonated with what you said. So I looked you up online and I found out that not only are you a therapist, but you have a blog that's called Rearranged by Motherhood, and it's all centered around thoughts around mothering and empowered mothering. So it was totally meant to be for the two of us to connect and be here to get today. So thank you.
Wonderful. Thanks.
Yeah. So the listeners got a bit of an introduction to you at the start of the show, but take a minute and tell us about yourself and your family.
Well, my husband and I are both trained as therapists, and Jason has now gone into more coaching and teaching online, and I am still working part-time as a therapist, and we have two young children. We got married about 8.5 years ago, and we have a 7-year-old son and a 5-year-old daughter, and we love our family. We love family life, and we were both people who, into even our early 30s were like, I don't know if we ever need to get married. I don't know if we ever need to have children. That's so conventional. Why would we do that? And we had these very progressive ideas. And, but as we deepened as a couple and hit more intense stuff just in our own relationship, things started coming out about really wanting to be committed to each other, wanting to be married, wanting to have a family. And so we are just having this amazing time finding our authentic way as a couple, as a family. And then, of course, we love to help other people with that journey as well.
Yeah. And you said in your bio that you never expected that you would be listing who you are as wife, mother, psychotherapist, writer in that order. I so relate with that. And so before children, what did you think your focus would be?
Well, I always really wanted to work with people. And, since I was a teenager, I was working with children. I was working with young women, teenagers. I really wanted to contribute to the world and understand people, and I loved working with people, especially people in difficult situations. I was really drawn to high-risk adolescents and psychology. Like when I was 14, I knew I wanted to be a therapist. I'd never been to one. I just learned about them in health class one day, and I was like, I want to know. I want to know how to help, or I want to know how to understand people and feelings and all the stuff I was wrestling with at 14. So I really saw myself wanting to be financially independent. I moved across the country at 21 by myself. I wanted to travel. I wanted to really see how much I could do. And I wasn't really drawn to marriage. I was definitely invested and involved in relationships all along the way, but I wasn't drawn to being a mother, although I was doing all this nurturing work. Like I look back now and I see this, I'm like, I was always nurturing people and nurturing my relationships, but I couldn't fully value it as a woman in my 20s. I really was just so focused on developing myself and my career and my independence and my autonomy. And I really felt empowered there. I felt very strong there. And I just couldn't even relate to a lot of my friends who were getting married and having children. It was so not in the plans for me at that point.
So did you actively think, no, I'm not going to have kids, or did it just not even cross your mind?
I just thought, if it happens, it happens. If I meet someone and that's what we want to do, great. But I wasn't working towards that. I wasn't like focused on that at all. It was just sort of, we'll see if I ever really want to. I'm not opposed to it, but I'm not focused on it at all. And I really was, eventually I wanted to have a life partner. By my late 20s, I was really feeling the longing for that. And that was much more important than having children. I really wanted to find someone I could spend my life with. And then if we wanted to have children together, we would figure that out and see if that could even be possible for us. I just felt very not attached, I guess, to the idea.
Yeah. So then you met your husband, you guys got married, and then how soon after you got married did the kid conversation come into play?
Like a week. And it was Jason who initiated it. He was like, I want to have kids. Like, and we'd sort of talked about it like, oh, maybe one day. And we were in our mid-30s, and I still felt like, I was like, well, maybe at 39, I'll think about it, when it's getting closer. But he really, right after we got married, he was very clear. He felt ready. He wanted to do it. And I was terrified. I really wasn't sure. I was 34, and I was like, I feel like I have a few more years before I even really need to consider that, but he was really ready. So I spent about 6 months, going to my own therapist, and I just really felt like I had to come to my own yes or no around that. And I even remember thinking, I might lose this marriage if I come to a real honest no around children, that could end things for us. But I needed to have that answer. I was one of 5 children, and my parents had kids because everyone was having kids. And it wasn't, I'm just someone who wants to know why. I want to know the deeper reasons for everything. And so I really needed to have my own experiential sense of why I would, bring children into this world. And so I did come to a full yes. And it was very non-rational and non-linear. It really came from a deeper willingness in me to just say yes to the unknown in that form of having a child with Jason. It was very particular to us and our marriage and where we'd gotten to, what I'd seen possible just between us.
Yeah, and I want to highlight that you said you were willing to consider the possibility that you might lose your marriage if the answer for you was no, that you weren't willing to sacrifice a false yes for saving the marriage.
Right.
Okay, so then you came to a yes and you had your first child. How was that?
The most surprising thing about becoming a mother for me was how much I loved it. It's really, I'm emotional at just even that statement, because I just had no idea how much I would love my child and love the role of being a mother. And I think I I was really ready for it to be hard and exhausting and stressful and hard on my marriage, all these things I'd heard my friends talking about, and thinking back to just, it was hard for my parents. They were wonderful parents, and it was really hard to have 5 children. I can imagine now. And I just was blown away by how committed and invested and joyful I felt about it. I mean, it was an incredible opening for me, and into a whole new part of myself that I think I'd been doing in my work as a therapist and all these work with younger people for so many years. I'd been nurturing, and now I could really do it in a way that from ground zero. And I just loved it. I loved it, and I felt really, really good there. And it was hard, and we were tired, and everything had to start changing, and we were navigating that, but I deeply loved my child, and that was profound for me.
And were you working at that time?
I was, but I was really able to make my own schedule. I was a private contractor at a center here where I live, and I was going in about 2 days a week for a few hours at a time. And throughout that first year of my son's life, I just very gradually increased my hours. And I took a few months off, but was able to work, and Jason could be with the baby. So for the first 6 months, he was with our son when I wasn't, and I could pump and had privacy and worked with all these great women. And so I had a really supportive situation. I could bring my son to our team meetings if I wanted, and it was very, very supportive and flexible. And I still remember feeling fear about kind of losing ground in my career. And, I turned down some promotions during that first year that I just knew I couldn't and didn't want to commit myself to at all, because it would sacrifice time with my son. And it was hard, but it felt right. It was what I needed to do. But that first year I felt like, wow, okay, I'm doing it. Okay, I'm doing it. I'm enjoying motherhood. I'm still working. I was just thrilled that it was kind of all still happening. And it wasn't until I had my second child, my daughter, less than 2 years after my son, that I really saw my limitations there. I really had to scale back even more at work. And that's when I really started to sort of hit my deeper struggles as a mother.
Hearing that you were so surprised by how much you loved being a mom, and then even just time-wise, I think a lot of us, when we're working, the thought of like scaling back sounds great, right? Like, yeah, sure, I'd love to scale back and be at home with a baby. And then that momentum and that adrenaline, it kind of just starts to run out, and then add a second child into the mix, and you're like, okay, whoa. Let's think about what's going on here. So what started happening for you emotionally?
Well, immediately I was, within days of having my daughter, I was just floored at how much harder it was to have a toddler and an infant. And they had such different needs, required such different parts of myself, it felt like. And it felt like just stretched in 2 totally different directions to meet my son's needs and my newborn's needs, try to take care of myself and all of that. I mean, I was deeply impressed at how challenging it was instantly. And I just remember it was the first time I started to think like, oh, I suck at this. I don't know how to do this. I am terrible at this. Like crying, all of us crying together, just one after another. I couldn't be this really attentive, responsive mother that I'd been able to be with my son. There was a lot more frustration in the system. Everyone had to wait. Things didn't go smoothly. We had to wing it so much. I couldn't really plan on much. And so it was a major learning curve there of sort of what I'd gotten myself into. And I was happy to just have a few hours, a couple times a week to see clients. And it was also the first, again, my husband was with the children again for that first year when I wasn't, which was so wonderful to know that. And we also had some babysitters helping us too. But it was the first time I questioned, should I keep working? Is this worth it? It was just so hard to even get out of the house. I had less energy. My job, I have to attend to, I walk in the room and it's like, I'm asking people, what do you need today? What do you need? And I was like, I need someone to ask me this. It was the first time that felt really out of balance, where I was like, wow, I'm really deeply attending to people and I don't have that right now. So those first couple of years were rocky in that sense. And I got pretty depleted energetically. I just wasn't recovering my physical energy. I had an abdominal diastasis after my second pregnancy that wasn't healing, despite having a lot of good care and resources. My husband was taking on a lot of the nighttime stuff so I could rest. And I just wasn't catching back up at all.
Did you stop working at any point?
I didn't. I kept my practice very small. I would see between 4 and 8 clients a week. And that was, I'm still not doing that much more than that, Michelle. I'm still keeping my practice around 10 hours a week because I'm just still recovering my energy and figuring out kind of what's the right balance for me.
I want to hear the mindset that made you not feel like you wanted to just go into mothering full time and to not let go of that work.
Gosh, my husband has heard me wrestle with this for years. And I think I finally landed somewhere, but there was a couple years there where I asked myself that constantly. And what I noticed was when I would come home from seeing clients, I had more energy. And that was 99% of the time true, that I would leave my house like, how am I going to do this? This is crazy. And I would come back feeling resourced, available, just more balanced. The role of being a therapist is really resourcing for me. And just attending to one person that was an adult, there was something that was regulating about it. And so I would notice that. And then I would also question is that just that part of me that gets a lot of validation from earning some money and working in the world, working outside my home? So I was kind of onto that piece. Is this true resourcing, or is this me just getting kind of like an ego hit of validation in the world? Because being home with my young children, I felt very invisible, disconnected from my value in society. And it was the first time I really related to how devalued I feel like mothers are and some of the struggles we have around feeling empowered. So that's where I really got into that conversation.
And I truly do feel like there are women that I meet who are mothers who don't work at all, and that there's something in motherhood for them that it's like a recharging battery or resourcing, like you say. And so we're all so different, and that we all have we have different needs there of things that fill us back up. Not all of us are, a self-winding watch just from motherhood.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. And I would sort of wonder, why can't I be? I know in my deepest self that at the end of the day, how my children are, how my family's doing, how we are together is the most important thing. I would drop everything else for that. And why can't I just let that be enough? And that was another question I would sit with, is what is this thing in me that really feels this longing to continue to have a voice and a presence in the world outside of motherhood? And so for a while, I didn't totally trust it. I questioned it. I'm like, is this an ego trip? Is this me being scared of a whole new identity? I mean, I rake through stuff. So I was doing that. And what I've come to is feeling like, having a voice for mothers, for relationship. I mean, really staying with my work all these years has really helped me develop this part of me that wants to have a voice in those areas and wants to be a resource to people in those particular life phases of marriage and parenthood. That's really who I'm working with more now, and it's around those pieces. And so I learn a lot, and it helps me be a better partner and mother by just steeping myself in those conversations and in the work of, how do we really use these challenges and changes in life to help us grow and bring more meaning to our lives? So somehow staying with my work, even very part-time, it really helps me stay tethered to this deeper, wiser part of me that really knows the value and the power of relating these questions and really embodying these roles as fully as I can.
So if a mom comes into you as a therapist and she is describing exactly that you have just described, that you went through, of just feeling so depleted, where would you start with her? What should she do?
That's a great question. Well, I start with really listening and making sure I'm getting her journey and her particular struggle, because chances are it's going to be a little different than mine. And if sometimes not a lot, she may have a really different marriage or different resources, different family, different history. So all those pieces really affect what each woman's particular struggle or what she's wrestling with is about. And, women know things like, I know I need to make time for myself, or I know I need to get more help with the kids, or they know this sort of surface stuff that we all talk about. But what I'm looking for and where I'm wanting to direct her attention and curiosity deeper than that, into how she's really experiencing this role, how she's really experiencing motherhood. And often it's a question of, is she really valuing herself here? Like, I'm amazed at how often mothers are doing more work than they've ever done in the home and with their children. They've never worked harder. And they're plagued by this sense that they're not doing enough. And I feel like we, at the risk of sounding cliche, it's amazing how there's a lot of truth to that a lot of what women are struggling with is, am I really doing enough in the world? Should I be working? Should I be home more? Should I be more social? Should I be exercising more? I mean, there's all these sort of messages that are particular to them, where they feel like I'm not getting it right. I'm not doing this well. And so a lot of what we do is we're trying to just sort of unravel all the messages that aren't theirs, that aren't coming from within, about what they really care about, what they really value, what's actually important to this woman right now. And each mother is a little different around what she needs to feel good in her life. What balance of family, work, time together, time apart, what resources she wants to use, how she wants to spend time with her children. It's all different. And so some of that is logistical, just figuring those pieces out. But really the work that I do comes in is around really understanding the deeper experience of caring for and raising children, and where is she in that? Where is she? And how is she? How is this woman right now in the midst of all that? And because it's easy to lose ourselves. And I feel like just birthing a child or adopting a child, becoming a mother it's such a huge identity change that it makes sense that we get a little disoriented and don't know, well, what do I need now? And how do I come back to myself and get clear and really know why I would do this thing that is so hard and so demanding? And how can it be something that doesn't deplete me? Is it possible for it to be something that I don't just endure, but I actually invest in and really get a lot out of, because I know exactly what I'm about here, or what this is for.
Yeah, and there's so much pressure right now for women that I feel like there has never been before. There's the pressure to parent a certain way, don't do this to your kids, don't have them in, XYZ, or else you're going to screw them up for life. So we've got the pressure to do that. Oh, and don't rely on a man to pay your bills. So you better be working too. And, and the list just goes on and on and on. And a lot of times they're all conflicting. And so then you're just left sitting here like, well, what am I supposed to do? And I often talk a lot about how we're raised as girls to be good girls, to follow the directions. And not only are there no directions, but the directions that we do find and try to piece together, it's not possible. And so we really are left with, we have to choose for ourselves.
Yes.
Yeah. And that's really scary.
Yeah, it's really confronting. And because you really have to we have to find ourselves in it. Like I really had to be like, hey, where am I? What do I want? And there's something so confronting about that question. I think that question, what do I want as a woman, is for some of us very, we go blank. We don't know. I'm like, well, I want my kids to do well. Well, that's not me. Or I want, it's how to really figure out, what do I want? What would be satisfying, fulfilling for me? And is there room for that in this? Like you're saying, there's a lot of pressure to prioritize relationships or other things, or sort of how it all looks or something like that. But to prioritize ourselves and just what our values are and what they are now that we're in this situation and we really know what it's like for us. I love helping women with that. And it feels ongoing for me. I feel like I have to keep checking in, like, is this working? Is this right for me right now? Am I getting what I need out of this so that I can, out of my life, all the things I'm putting energy into, so that I can really give myself fully to the things that matter the most to me.
The show is not over yet, but I wanted to remind you that in just a few episodes, we'll be wrapping up season 1 with episode 20. It's an interview with the fabulous artist and mother, Kelly Ray Roberts, and I'll be back with season 2 in the fall. If you'd like to get some free bonus material over the summer, make sure you're following along on Facebook, Instagram, or Twitter. And I also wanted to make sure that you know that there are free soul worksheets available for every episode on soulworkformoms.com. Each and every soul worksheet has that week's action step from the episode listed at the top, along with 5 journaling questions inspired by the show. So by the end of season 1, you could have 20 free soul worksheets to work through over the summer. So if that sounds like something you'd like to do, be sure to check that out on soulworkformoms.com. Now let's get back to the show.
So looking back on your own situation, if you were going to tell the young, prior to being a mom, Ellen, what would you tell her to do differently?
Nothing. I feel like how it all unfolded for me was exactly right. It was exactly the kind of tension and discomfort that I needed to really find my own way.
I love that. Yeah.
Yeah.
Because then it gives women who are going through that permission to go through it and to not feel like, oh, I'm messing this up too.
Right. Like if we could just see whatever's happening as this is all helping me find my way. And if this is painful or uncomfortable or whatever it is, but that ultimately it's going, for me, I had to get pretty depleted. I had to, really depend on my husband a lot more than felt comfortable. That woman, and the way I was in my 20s, it's amazing how far I've come in the sense that I can really rely on him. And on many levels, for me, that's been very healing, actually. And so I sort of had to get myself into that corner of, wow, if I'm going to do this the way I want to, or, let alone enjoy it, I have to really shift how, what my standards are, what I'm expecting of myself, and really look at where I'm judging myself or thinking I should do it differently. And just what is the way I want to? I hadn't even really identified that fully. It took me years, and I'm sure it will keep evolving.
Yeah. I read on your blog that you say that the work motherhood balance phrase makes you cringe. Tell me why.
Because it sets up this idea that there's some perfect place that we can find, that if we could just balance it all just right, then all of this tension and conflict and tiredness would just go away. And I think it just sets us up for a fantasy that, we look outside of ourselves like, well, how are other women doing it? Or, just trying to come up with ideas of what sounds good versus really finding, what is balance? What would be a balanced life for me? What are the things I need what does balance even mean? I think it's different for each person. For a while there, balance meant getting a lot more sleep. Now it means something else. I'm getting sleep now, so I have energy for other things replenish me. So things like that.
And you described the birth of your second child going into that emotional space where things were unraveling and hard and you had to really figure things out. So where would you say you are right now? How are you feeling about this whole motherhood thing?
I feel like my feet are on the ground underneath me, and I have like humor and curiosity about my experience. And I have a lot of love and appreciation for myself for just having really stayed with hard questions and the unknown and continuing to do that. I feel like I can see I know the landscape I'm in now. It's like, oh, okay, I know I've been here for a while. I know I can look around and this looks familiar. And I totally trust that I can find my way. I know how to use my husband. I know what helps me really find myself and find my deeper feelings and values. And, I have a little space. My children are not so on my body all the time. Yeah. So I actually can think about myself a little more. So it feels, I feel much more stabilized. I was talking to a friend recently who said, she's like, oh, that's kind of like her definition of when like the postpartum phase is ending. It's like when you have that sense of I'm stabilizing in my energy and my focus and I know where I am now.
And when you feel yourself starting to get depleted, what's your go-to to fix that?
Oh, that's a great question. The first thing I think of is my husband. I have to go to him. And the reason I do is because he really helps me there. When I'm depleted, it's hard for me to figure out what I need. I'm just like, I need a month alone, I get to that point, and that's not really what I want or need. But going to him and I think getting resourced there. A lot of times I'm not using our connection enough to resource myself. So if I start with him and then him and in talking with him, often I can figure out sort of, I need a day alone at home and he'll take the kids and do something. Or sometimes I need to see my girlfriends. I have a couple really close friends that I can share all of this with and really get a lot of great just feedback and support from. So it varies, but I often either need time alone or time with someone who I just feel really held by. And so my husband's my go-to there.
Cool.
Mm-hmm.
So you've answered this question, I think, over and over, but I would love to hear your answer just when asked point blank. How has being a mother changed you?
Oh, it's changed me so much. I'd say primarily it's changed the things that matter most to me. These two new beings in the world matter the most. And my relationship to them and our family is really the most important thing. So because of that, everything has to shift around that. The way I even do friendships or do, my family relationships has shifted. My boundaries are different because I'm wanting to preserve myself for, my kids, preserve my energy for mothering and for my marriage. And, how I even take care of my body is different. I don't have as much energy to be as physically active as I was in my 20s. I want to nurture my energy in a different way. So, how I view marriage and committed relationship is totally different from being as a mother now, seeing how important it is to feel really connected to my husband as consistently as possible. I mean, that has a huge impact on my mothering. So in terms of my relationships to the people I care about, even as a therapist, my boundaries and how I show up there is different. I think more mature, and just even what I track out in the world is different now as a mother. I notice mothers, I notice children more. I care about the things that affect them and their well-being. So it's like I have a whole new filter that I see and experience the world through. That feels very much like it's enhanced my life greatly.
That's beautiful.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm curious, we had talked in a pre-interview email just briefly, and you had mentioned something about how while you really appreciate the permission that mothers give themselves to be funny about their struggles or sometimes self-deprecating, that you don't want to just commiserate with other mothers like we're victims of our lives, as you said, that while you appreciate that, you want more.
Yes.
What do you think happens when we stop there, when we are just, I think it can at first feel good to be like, oh, I'm not alone.
Yes.
But I think that we get stuck in a holding pattern of just being there over and over, like, oh, I'm not alone, that my life sucks. Oh, I'm not alone, that my marriage is going down the drain and my husband's an idiot, right?
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Yeah, I'm so glad you're asking that, because I love the way that like women in the bathroom, we can connect around anything. You know, I've always loved that about women, the openness or the sense of immediate connection and honesty we can have with each other, even about things that are hard or not pretty at all, or any of that. And I do appreciate that. And I noticed that I really wanted, and this is part of why I'm writing and doing more things like that, is because I'm really wanting for us to go further. I feel like what we miss out on is the opportunity to empower ourselves in our lives. If I just stopped there, I wouldn't have found, okay, what do I really want for myself? How do I really want this to go? This isn't just this thing this river that I'm just swept up in. Like, I actually get to steer this, but I have to take my seat. And so that process of really stepping out into the, like, okay, I'm going to steer this ship, has been so important for me to feel empowered in a role where I don't get paid. No one says thank you. It's really just this intimate love between me and my kids that's very rich, but there's none of the sort of outward worldly recognition that I used to get a lot of. For me to feel really empowered there, it's really taken me getting oriented around, what do I want? How do I want this to go? And I'm going to create something here. And I'm not going to just stop at, oh, this is so hard, or I'm so exhausted, or this is so crazy. Like, I obviously have those days and have less of them now as my children get older.
And that's empowered mothering.
Yeah, I think so.
Yeah.
I think so. That sense of agency and authenticity. So the authenticity we want, the truth we want, but the whole truth, like, that's just a half truth. Sort of the commiserating is just half of it. But I know all those mothers are also blown away by the incredible opportunity we have to raise these amazing little beings that just blow our minds ongoingly. So I want to hear about the whole picture.
Yeah, absolutely. I do too. And that's why we're having this conversation.
Yes.
And that's why you and I are doing what we're doing. And really, that is what I call soul work for moms. That soul work that we have to do that work. We have to get in there in the dirt, get our hands dirty, and be willing to go through a little bit of pain so that we can figure out a life where we feel whole, and in turn then can be models for our children to live lives, to ask those same questions of themselves, not just about motherhood, but about life.
Absolutely. Yes. Yeah.
All right, so we're going to start wrapping up. I just have a few questions left. I really want to hear, out of all of that, Ellen, what are you most thankful for in your role of being a mom?
Wow. I'm thankful that I get to nurture these little humans from day one, from conception, really. That I get to be there as a pillar of love and trust and safety throughout their life. It feels like an enormous honor to be able to provide that for another person. And I'm so thankful that I get to do that. And I'm growing so much from that process, because it's obviously not easy to show up in that way consistently through everything that people go through in life. But I'm very thankful that I get the chance to do it.
What do you hope your children remember about their childhood or take with them from childhood?
Several things. One is that they're just inherently lovable. Another is that the world has love and goodness and help in it, that any challenge can be managed with the right kind and amount of support. So I want them to go out into the world feeling like they have this sense of home that they can always come back to in their heart, that they just take with them, the sense of love and goodness.
And last question to you, what is the one thing that you want all mothers to know? That they're doing enough, that she's right where she needs to be, that she's the perfect mother for her children and her family, that she can absolutely find her way, that she has the answers within her, and with the right space and support, she will find them. And something that you said earlier, Michelle, it's to stay with those frustrations and challenges, because there is a deeper learning that's going on, that if she can grab hold of that and see that would empower her for whatever the challenges she's needing to face. Beautiful. Ellen, thanks so much for coming on and sharing your story with us and sharing your words of wisdom. I really appreciate you taking the time, and I think that there will be a lot of moms who take a lot of comfort in what you said today.
Thank you for having me, Michelle.
That brings us to this week's Soul Work action step. Think about what recharges you. What do you walk away from feeling more resourced or recharged by than when you started? For Ellen, it's seeing clients part-time. For me, it's producing this podcast. For you, it might be hosting dinners for friends, or sneaking away to paint, or spending time with your children. The possibilities are endless, but only you can know what recharges you. It's important to note here that there is no wrong answer. This action step is written on top of this week's free journaling sheet that goes along with today's episode on soulworkformoms.com in the show notes for episode 17. If you'd like to read more of Ellen's thoughts about motherhood and connect with her, her website is rearrangedbymotherhood.com, and she also has a Facebook page under the same name. Again, that's also in today's show notes on the website. And I'll end today by reminding you that you matter, Mama. Your unique contributions to the world, especially as a mother, they make a difference. When you heal your wounds through soul work, you share your most authentic self with us, which encourages your children to share their most authentic selves with us, and that encourages us to do the same. And that is evolution through mothering. Thanks for listening, and I'll see you next week.